Hi everybody, I'm gonna make a drone on the Mono Evolver. As usual, I'm gonna build a track. Gonna start with this. I've got the Digitact just down here, and either part 2 or later in this one, I'm going to sample the drone that I've made on the Mono Evolver keyboard and put it into the Digitact and start to layer. So in a weird way, I'm going to sort of turn this mono evolver into a poly evolver by recording various iterations of the drone that we build into the Digitac and layer it. I've been having lots of fun in the Digitac using the grid, recording 128 step 8-bar sequence and then slicing it and using that as making bass lines and other kind of elements. So we'll get to the Digitac in a bit, but thanks very much for joining me. Let's have a go through this and see how I work with the Evolver. This is like my unicorn synth. I really learnt synthesis using an Evolver desktop. I'd been playing with lots of guitar pedals and weird function generator things that a friend's uncle in Wagga had lent us from an ex-military supply, and had a access to a Frostwave resonator, which was an MS-20 filter clone. There were some other Frostwave pedals which were from a maker down in Melbourne. They all had this thing called CV and the other guitar pedals had expression pedals, and it was like, what does that sort of work, and how does that work? And so through the brains trust, ended up with these CV generators, and myself and another friend, big shout out to Adam Bell, we were plugging things in so that the pedals were doing things kind of by themselves, which was really, really fun. And that led on this journey to, well, what actually is synthesis? And I'd had a couple of synthesizers, but it was always just, turn a knob and go, oh, what does that do? But there was a really, really great book that was written, or a guide, the definitive guide to the Evolver by Anu Kirk. And I think there was a fellow called Carbon 111. And if I can find that link, I'll put that link into the description of this video. But I read that from front to back with the desktop Evolver in front of me. And I learnt everything, because it was, well, not everything. I learnt a lot. It was this kind of process of, like even pulse width modulation and setting up a basic sort of patch, and putting a pulse width modulation on it and modulating that, and like suddenly, it says in the book, and now you've just recreated Gary Newman's Cars, and it's like, okay, great. I'm getting the history, I'm getting the context, but I'm also understanding what this is. So my Evolver journey was hugely influential in learning synthesis, learning the modulation, learning modulation matrix, and then that plus the guitar pedal kind of lineage set me up for modular synth. And so the thing for me after going with the desktop was, how do I get this? The poly evolver was always the dream, but like 1 squillion megabucks for that. So having one of these, and I had one and I loved it and I used it a lot. And then in the never-ending downward spiral money pit of Euro rack acquisition, I sold it thinking, oh, that'll give me a couple of modules. And it's been about 10 years and I've only just recently been able to reacquire one of these, thanks to someone that heard my plea, and my nostalgia getting too big. And so if you haven't had a crack at an Evolver, The basic idea of it is we've got an oscillator section up here with 4 oscillators, 2 analog oscillators and 2 digital oscillators. The analog oscillators have got pulse width modulation, plus you can sync them. 3 and 4 with the digital ones, and I always get this kind of wrong, but it's from one of Dave Smith's original, they're the wave tables or the wave shapes from one of his original synths. I'm going to take a terrible guess and say like the Prophet. And you can do some kind of cool things with them. So you can ring mod them, you can FM them. Then it's got this shape mod, which allows you to take one of the 4 sequences that's built in here. So this is doubles. So this is your filter section and your amp, high pass, feedback, distortion, delay. We'll get to those in a second. But it does allow, when we hit sequencer edit, this becomes step 1, 2, 3, 4 through to 16. And you can choose which sequencer, 1 out of 4, to be able to choose that. And you can route the sequencer to anything that you want, just through the modulation matrix. You can just kind of choose where the destination is of each of these. You can have multiple destinations. It's hugely flexible in terms of its modulation. But the other thing that it does is it enables you to actually sequence the waveforms of oscillator 3 and 4. One of my favorite things in synthesis is morphing wave shapes, especially for long kind of drones and having that synthesizer timbre change over time. But this is a bit different because it does step. So each step that it hits, it's playing a different waveform. So there's no interpolation in between those waves. So it has a particular sound as it does that. And we might just sequence one of these with that as we go. So yes, filter section, you can turn it between a 2-pole and a 4-pole. It's the Curtis filter. It's okay. I find that the resonance, once you crank the resonance, it actually drops the low frequencies out of the filter. So I don't really use resonance a lot in my patches. And one of the things that you'll see me do is actually map the modulation wheel to my filter. And when I'm performing, I'm really just using this to be able to kind of open and close the filter as it goes. It does have this cool function in here, which is a left-right split of the filter, and we'll listen to that, and it gives a really broad stereo image of the oscillators. So it'll split oscillator 1 to the left, oscillator 2 to the right, oscillator 3 to the left, and oscillator 4 to the right, and it just gives you this really lovely sort of sound. This spatial component of it. And then into the amp, it's got its own envelope, obviously, and same with the output spread. Oh, that's what I wanted to say about the left-right split, is it's essentially 2 filters for a left and the right, and you can, close one filter down while the other one opens. And that's modulation, that's in the mod matrix as well. You can choose that as a destination and send stuff to it. A high pass filter at the end, this amazing little kind of feedback circuit that takes it out, and there's a little yellow line that comes back and then brings it back into the filter. And then with that, you can change the frequency of that feedback. You can add an extra layer of grunge, we'll listen to that, and you can choose the level. And then just kind of hidden in here is a little red light that will show you if you're clipping the circuit, and that adds another level of character to the sound. It goes into its own analog distortion, and then there's a 3-tap delay. So as you choose, you can see where the feedback, so the first feedback comes back into just the delay circuit, but feedback 2 comes back in through the filter. So you're actually filtering that as it goes through. And this can be synced to MIDI. So it can be clocked, or you can just kind of do your measurements. And then finally, there's another output hack here, which is kind of like a bit crusher sample rate reduction, just to kind of add a whole extra layer of stuff over the top if you want to make it even more aggressive. But as you kind of build through, you'll find that the sound is getting sort of quite messy and quite crunchy without that. But just in case you want more extra salt on the chips. Finally, almost finally, the third envelope that you can choose where your destination goes. 4 LFOs, whole bunch of miscellaneous parameters, including an oscillator slop. So the analog oscillators are digitally controlled, but you can bring in a little bit of slop so that they are slightly going in and out of tune. And then a mod matrix here, 4 extra slots to be able to choose where things go. I've also got a Pro 3, and you can see the lineage from the Evolver into the Pro 3, I guess in the same way that you see the Prophet go into the Evolver, and then obviously they released other Prophets. But the idea of those later synths is with a modulation matrix, you're able to go, here's the source, here's the destination, and then choose the amount. With this, you've got to kind of go through each one and choose what your source is, and then what your destination is, and then the amount. So it's a little bit less intuitive, but this thing still has amazing sound. The other thing that I've got down here is eventually I'm going to run this through the Endorphins Ghost pedal, and it's just going to give it another layer, but that's going to be more just for the kind of performance, not when I'm sampling. I want to kind of sample it raw, and then I can use the Digitac 2 effects to be able to work with those, but I will program in some of the built-in delay. All right, let's go. So my approach with working with the Evolver is to go, I've actually got 4 sound sources in here, and work with 4 distinct kind of layers, and to see how they're all going to be sort of playing together. So my first thing is let's just go down some octaves, and we're just going to hang in G flat. We're just going to hang in here, and all we're hearing right now is simply oscillator 1, and I've got no left-right split, I've got no output spread happening, so we're just hearing it coming through. Just really quickly, finally, how I've got everything set up. I've got MIDI out from the Digitac, which is just down below here. MIDI out is going up, and MIDI in to the Evolver. In global, I've got that set to, if I keep going down, MIDI channel all, clock MIDI in is set there. And then I've got MIDI out, MIDI through going out of the Evolver, and then the Ghost has MIDI in, and so that means that my delays can be clocked from the Digitac as master tempo. And that's the other thing I just need to do, is I'm just going to drop the master tempo. Let's go 46 BPM. We can see what that does. All right, and then technically, if I press play on here, look, it's happening. You can see it actually going through and sequencing. So the sequencer playing as I press play on the Digitac. So this will control the sequencer. So we can actually try some of the shape mod on oscillator 3 and 4. But to begin with, I'm just going to up the amp level and let it drone. And then we're just going to kind of play with this one. So shapes, pulse width modulation, saw, triangle, saw, triangle. But I want pulse width because, like I said, I just love that morphing waveform sound. So I'm going to start with LFO1 and I'll just bring the frequency right down on that, and my destination is going to be oscillator 1 pulse width, and then let's put it up. You can hear that, and let's just get it really low and slow. And shape to begin with is going to be triangle. With oscillator 2, which we can do now, I'm going to bring up its level. So just really quickly, I'll just turn that VC8 level down. It's important just to watch the gain staging, and I picked this up from the definitive guide to the Evolver, making sure like everything will be 0 to 127. So if I go level, to 100, other things will be that, but level 0 to 100. So let's just bring that down to like 55, and then we'll have oscillator 2 at 55 too. And now let's just bring this back up. And again, I'm going to jump into a pulse wave. I'm going to put it at 50%. And then LFO2, I'm going to make my destination to oscillator 2 pulse width. Just see, I had 3, and so as a frequency, but for LFO2, I'm going to actually sync it. So once you get up past, goes to 150, you then have some steps. Because what I'm going to do is, let's put it at 2 steps to begin with, and let's put it at a good amount, 40. So if my pulse width's at 50 and I've got an LFO of 40, it should bring it to a maximum of 90 or 10. So that'll give me my range, as the LFO is bipolar, so it's taking away and it's adding as it goes. So I've already got a little bit of kind of movement that's happening between the two. Excuse me. This has got some sync, and so one of those little kind of fun things that is a cool, tricky thing to do is modulate the pitch of that second oscillator that's synced to oscillator 1, and it'll just give it another level of depth. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take LFO1 and slightly add it to the pitch of 2. So I'm going to go up to my modulators. My source is going to be LFO1 because that's what I've got mapped to the pulse width of oscillator 1, and then my destination is going to be oscillator 2 frequency and just a bit. The only other thing that I wanted to do on LFO2 was just change the shape to a reverse saw for that pulse width modulation. So the shapes that it's got for the LFO is triangle, reverse saw, sawtooth, square, and random. And if I go to reverse saw, I want that kind of step. So it'll go bang at the peak and then drop down, and then go bang and then drop the peak. So it starts to actually get a little bit of kind of percussive element into the drone as it's coming through. And then there's some kind of fun bits. So in Oscillator 2, I can, you know, like just go up a whole octave. Where was I? Yeah, CO, so that we could. No, we'll just go back there. Leave it down there. Just get this kind of subtle movement. And let's just give you a quick preview of kind of what it's going to sound like with the Ghost a little bit later on. So with the Ghost, I've got distortion, I've got a shimmer reverb on, and I've got a delay, and then I've also got cabinet setup. So it's going to give us that real kind of guitar kind of tone. Cool. Alright, so let's jump to Oscillator 3 and bring its level up. And what I kind of find I like with the Evolver is when we're getting like another oscillator coming up. Let's just go to 55 again, just watching that gain staging as we go through, because we've got more that we can add as we go. Is finding a shape for Oscillator 3 that is sort of different. So there's a booklet in the manual that will show you the different waves, but I'm just going to just giving us another timbre layer to be able to work with. And this is a little bit of a limitation with the Evolver that you don't have in the Pro 3, is the Pro 3 lets you morph those digital oscillators, so you can smoothly interpolate between the wavetables and the waveforms. Whereas in here, once we choose the shape, that's kind of it, and it will step through these. Let's bring it back up. That's kind of cool, sitting there at 26. And so if I go think, all right, 26, 29, 30, 31, so 26, 29, 30 and 31. All right, so if I put shape mod on, it goes to the shape sequence off, but then I can choose sequence 1. So I'm just going to quickly go into sequence edit, sequence 1, and then on step 1 you can hear it as I go through setting the different waveforms. So I think it's 26, 29, 30, 31, 26, 29. Let's just add some randoms in there so it doesn't get too repetitive. Yep, cool. Back to 26. Let's go to 31. How many has it got? It's got 100 different waveforms. And you know what I could do here? On step 15, reset. And so it'll only play through 15 steps and then reset. So it'll kind of just sort of add and change things as it goes. Good. All right, oscillator 4. Bring its level up. 55. Turn sequence to edit off. Okay. All right, for this, I'm just going to find something that gives us a good layer. I think that's kind of cool. Like we're down here. We'll have the filter to play with. Let's go just there now and just... And I might just set that up now. So mod source 2, source is going to be modwheel, modulation destination is going to be low pass, and mod amount will be maximum, and let's bring it down. Now this is a thing that's a little bit weird. Let's bring this down. Right, so for the mod amount, it goes up to 100, but my filter amount is 164. So I can never actually completely close or open the filter with the mod wheel. Limitation or feature? Let's have a listen and see. Bring the DSI level back up. 100. So you can see that I'm all the way down, but there's still some low frequencies coming through. So it's a bit of a choice of, do I not get the high registers, those high frequencies coming through for a complete close off? So kind of split the difference. So one other thing that I'm going to do, let's just test with the Ghost and see how we're sounding. Haha, note to self, check the battery in the camera, sorry. It's pretty good. It's kind of, but we haven't even got through here, so we can just play with that. The other thing I was just going to check quickly is, let's press play and listen to the wave sequencing. I'm going to do one more thing, which is oscillator 3. Let's set the frequency of that to be clocked. All the way up. Slow, 4 steps, 1 step, we'll try. Shape again is going to be reverse saw, just to bring another sort of sequence in, so we can see 1, so 2, 1, you can just see those lights representing the shape, and the destination is going to be the ring mod. Oscillator 3 to 4. Let's try the other way. So yeah, ring mod 4 into 3. Well, let's go 3 into 4 because we've got the shape mod, the wave sequencing going on from 3 into 4, so that as this changes, it'll do both. And let's set the amount. Oh, see, look, it's starting to click in here. Let's just try that. That's 50. And let's press play. Okay, happening. It's happening. All right. I can play with the filters, the envelopes a little bit later, but at the moment you're just here to kind of hear the drone. So let's keep going with that for a minute, because the next step is to play with the delay. So delay 1. This will do everything from car plus strong to long synced delays. So it's just kind of what you want to do. And again, as you're kind of going through the time, in the manual, in the guidebook, it'll actually give you what this is in seconds. But I'm going to make delay 1 1.5 steps. Let's play with that. Let's set the amount up. Again, this is another level point to be watching your gain staging as it comes through. If I do feedback 2, I'll see if it's clipping here, but otherwise it's a bit of a guesstimate as to how much. So something like 30 to 40 seems to be usually enough. Let's get a bit of feedback happening in here. Again, another gain staging point and a bit of feedback too. And for some of the other stages, I'll actually set up a mod matrix or route an LFO to some of this so that we can bring, you know, these levels or these layers of feedback in over time. Press play so we can see what that shape mod sounds like. Cool. All right, delay 2. Let's just randomly pick a bit of non-synced and bring the amount up. And a bit of feedback 2. And a bit of feedback 1. Oh, so sorry, I keep doing that. These are separate tabs, but the feedback 1 and the feedback 2 are the same for each one, but all you have control of is the time and the amount for each of the delays. So you can just kind of, all you can do is just add more of an amount. Okay, 2 things that we must do. One is have a listen to this output spread. So when it's all the way down, it's at a mono. You've got a set where you're initially setting those oscillators to go to the right and to the left, but the stereo width is very low. Just hear that, and then we can make that wider and wider. How nice is that output spread? So you can almost get this kind of binaural space happening between the 2 sets of oscillators that's happening. Just watching this light sort of flash every now and then. So I'm going to go back to each of my levels of my oscillators and just drop them down a little bit. It's really well set up how this works, because this is not the pot edition. So these come in 2 different editions. This is the encoder version, which is the first version. The encoders of the Evolver were known to be quite dodgy and are quite dodgy. The person I bought this from actually upgraded all of the encoders with Alps encoders. So if you find an Evolver, you might find that sometimes when you're changing these levels that it skips around a bit, and you need to kind of deox it. But then Dave Smith Instruments released a panel replacement which were pots. So they weren't encoders, they weren't stepped encoders, they were pots, and you could set it to, you know, like pick up or jump, you know, when you actually sort of set it. But with the encoder version, once they've all been sort of changed or replaced, the first time that you touch it, it'll jump to telling you what the level is. Later synths have, you know, capacitive things so that you can touch a pot or a knob and it'll come up and it'll say, oh, that's what this value is. But this one, what you need to do is just change the value or 1 notch, and then it'll show you what that parameter is, and then you can just edit that as you need to. But yes, if you're looking at getting an Evolver, just ask the question, have the encoders been changed? Are you getting the pot version? The desktop version is better because you're only kind of changing 8 pots or 8 knobs. But you know, this one, there's a whole heap more. So, and I don't think Dave Smith sell the replacement boards anymore to upgrade it to the pot, but they do sell these cool Prophet knobs. So you can get the Prophet knobs and replace these, because the original knobs, they were starting to get kind of really sticky and weird. And they're just kind of plastic and they're a bit loose, and every time you'd go to reach out to something, you know, suddenly you'd have a pot in your hand or a knob in your hand. Okay, cool. Oh, the other thing that I wanted to do was just add a bit of distortion. So we're already pretty crunchy, but this just kind of takes these 4 oscillators and smashes them together in a really nice way. So it starts at 0, neutral gain, and then it jumps to 2, and it goes up from there. I mean, it gets ridiculous. Ridiculous in a good way, but all I'm going to do is just have like 3. We're almost done, so thanks very much for staying with me. I just looked down and realised we've just had 42 minutes together. But I'll cut out the little black section in the middle where I lost the battery. But let's just jump into the feedback here. Again, in the manual, it'll tell you, you know, like what the frequencies are as it's tuning it through. This is another gain stage point just to sort of watch out for. So if I've got 50 at each of my oscillators, I'm already pushing the headroom inside the circuit as it goes through, plus what I've put in just for 2 delay lines, because I don't have a 3rd delay line yet, plus the bit of the distortion. So we're already in tight headroom space, but it's okay because it always kind of sounds nice. It's always a pleasant clipping. But let's just have a bit of a listen, and I think what I'm going to do with LFO4 is have this so that it's going to come in. So it's just this beautiful kind of feedback loop that's happening, that's starting to merge everything together. And like, I'm still playing through these, but listen. So I think what I'm going to do is LFO4, let's go destination, feedback level, feedback amount, and let's do a sawtooth. So it's going to come up, feedback, 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 and then drop, and then let's do that timed. 1 step, 2 steps. Let's try. And I don't know if you saw, but as I was doing that level, like 28's kind of enough. So let's start there and see what that does. And then I'm just gonna finally, because we're almost done, I'm gonna just hit this grunge. I'm not going to do the third tapped delay line because I've got the ghost down here and that's got another bit of delay and reverb over the top of it. But let's just listen to this whole thing with the ghost. Very quickly, I want to go right, and I want to say yes, but I want to just quickly go rename, name miscellaneous parameters, there it is, and then I do this, glug 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 glug. There we go, new name. Yes, and then go right, we say yes, and that's saved. Well, thanks very much for playing along. Part 2 of this is going to be moving the camera and just pretty much looking at the digitact and recording some loops from that sequence into here and then layering all of those together. So keep an eye out. I'll put a link in this one. If you like it, subscribe, leave a comment. Have you got an Evolver? What do you do with it? What other kind of synths have similar architectures? Like the Hydrasynth is a fun one. Obviously the Pro 3 is the kind of the next level up, but this thing just feels really immediate. It's right there. Thanks very much for watching. If you've got any other questions about the Evolver, with my limited knowledge, I'll try and answer it. There's so much more. Have a look at that definitive guide to the Evolver by Anu Kirk. It's just really good for basic synthesis principles as well. If you're starting out with synthesis and what that is, it's a really good sort of starting point to have a look at. Anyway, I've talked enough. Thanks very much for hanging. Bye-bye.